What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find right here on the Crossover channel. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh. And today we are going to be bringing you guys our official Crossover U preseason All-American team predictions. We're going to give you guys a first, second, and third team, along with an honorable mention team. Pretty much going to break down who we think are going to be some of the top flight premier players in the sport this year. Before we get into that today, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on the Crossover channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can. Whether it's liking, subscribing to our channel, or just telling other people about what we do here. It goes a long way with growing this channel overall. So let's get right into it with our first team. I'm going to throw out my first pick. I have Braden Smith. Really not all too much needs to be said here. He's returning as a first-team All-American Bob Cousy Award winner, has a chance to break the all-time assist record, passing the legendary Bobby Hurley with what he did at Duke. It's going to need to average a lot of assists per game, but that's fully in the world of possibility for a player the caliber of a Braden Smith. And I just don't see how you could leave him off your first team predictions-wise going to the season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. He's probably the front runner for National Player of the Year right now, Big Ten Player of the Year. He's the best point guard in the game, the most well-played player, most paid player as of right now, or according to some sources. But I'll follow up with another Big Ten guy, Yaxel Lendenberg. I feel like he is almost a locked-in guarantee for a first-team All-American. He's likely the best power forward in the sport right now, and he will carry that Michigan team heavy, especially in March.
Yeah, again, Yaxel is kind of a no-brainer pick here. I teeter back and forth every day between him and Braden Smith in terms of who I think will end up winning the National Player of the Year trophy. I think Yaxel is, not to slight Danny Wolf in any way, but I think Yaxel is more naturally talented than Danny Wolf was coming over to Ann Arbor to play for Dusty Mayhem, Michigan. And Michigan's ceiling is really high, and Yaxel is a huge reason why he was one of the top-ranked transfers in this offseason cycle. I fully expect him to have a huge year scoring-wise and just what he can do as a three-level guy. Defensively, and in addition, his playmaking as well. I think he's a really underrated passer out of the post. But getting on to my next pick, I have Todd Pettiford. Again, if you've followed this podcast, you know how much of a big Todd Pettiford fan I am. I think he shows up for the big games. He can do so much off the dribble with being able to break guys down. And he's the lone returner for Bruce Pearl this year. And he's a guy on that roster that Pearl trusts the most. I fully expect him to see a leap this year in a starting role where he was coming off the bench last year. So I expect his numbers scoring wise to jump. I also expect him to, add to his already strong 3 assists off the bench.
Yeah, I like the hot pick here. I feel like he's bound to have a big year. He is replacing a massively depreciated roster, and Auburn's known to have players that just rise to the occasion. I feel like Dahad's in that list as well. And another guy laid down his team to lead is J. Toppin out of Texas Tech. I feel like he is also honestly a very similar slot to Yak, very similar players, and kind of like Dahad, he's rising to the occasion. He's a returner. He's getting paid a huge bag to play for the Red Raiders once again, and I just feel like regardless of, honestly, points-wise, I feel like he's going to average 20 a game in almost any scenario. He really deserves that first-team mention. He's a Player of the Year candidate, and I think a lot of people are really going to look at him as he's definitely preseason. He's definitely preseason in my mind, and I think he's definitely going to stay that way for the rest of the
year. Definitely. I mean, JT Toppin, he could have been a first-round pick in the NBA draft, is getting paid handsomely to return to the Texas Tech program this season. I, again, fully expect him, like you mentioned, to be in the National Player of the Year race the entirety of the season. He's a guy who could go off for 30 on any given night like we saw last year, and he's a guy that I fully expect to be on the first team at the end of the year. And getting on to the guy we have rounding out our first team, I have Zuby Ejiofor. Like I've gone on record and said, I believe Zuby Ejiofor is the best center in the country going into the 25-26 season in college basketball. I don't think there's enough that you can speak to in terms of how much he's grown as a player from not really playing all too much at Kansas, coming over to St. John's with Rick Pitino. Didn't have the best first year in Queens, but last year became a first-team All-Big East selection, is the lone returning starter for Slick Rick this year. And I fully expect him to once again anchor the Johnnies down low and really add to what already is a vast improvement offensively.
Yeah, Zuby is by far the best center in the game. He will not necessarily be manning the lead for St. John's. I feel like the team is way too well structured to have him be the solo guy, but his contributions at the 5 are so much more crucial than any other 5 or any other center in D1 right now. And I think for that reason alone, he honestly deserves a first team more than almost any other player listed here today.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with that take there. Again, it's really cool to see how far Zuby has come as a player. And I expect him to definitely be in contention to be an All-American at the end of the conclusion of the regular season. But getting on to the second team, first guy I'm going to throw out is Donovan Dent, one of the top transfers in this past offseason, going from New Mexico to UCLA. Really excited to see how he adjusts to playing up now at the Power 5 level against Big Ten competition. Granted, he struggled a little bit against Michigan State in the second round of last year's NCAA tournament, but he's a guy who averaged 20 points per game and nearly 6 assists last year, and I expect him to be able to put up similar numbers. I think he's really talented as a scorer. He's shot 40% from three last year, and he's one of, if not the most talented playmakers in the country returning to the sport. And I expect Donovan Dent to have a really productive year for Mick Cronin. Following up what could be in competition to make a first team, but we have him on our second team for the time being. That is Otega Oweh. He was Mr. Consistent for Kentucky last year, had that string of, I forget however many 20-point games in a row, but he's a clutch player, hit several game-winning shots for the Wildcats this past season, and he's one of the only true returning players in big role, and who played a big role last year, who was returning this season for Mark Pope. And again, he averaged around 16 points per game, 17 maybe, I forget off the top of my head, last season. You could see the numbers jump. Kentucky's really talented, so I'm sure the scoring distribution will be pretty spread out. But for Kentucky to go as far as they think they can, I think Otega is going to need to be a big reason why. And again, I fully expect him to be on an All-American team at the end of the year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. I'd like to say, too, Oweh has that first team ceiling, but because of how well structured Kentucky is, I feel like personally, Oweh can't be, or he's almost limited by how good his team is, which sounds almost rude to say, but Oweh can only score so much. He can only have the ball so much when there is an incredibly strong and deep lineup. I think, however, he is likely the only All-American on this team, and if he is that case, I think he definitely can reach for that first team choice. I'll throw another good name in there for second team that we chose, the probably freshman of the year, AJ DeBanza, from now the newly anointed king of the West, BYU. I feel like DeBanza is super put in for this role. He has a great team surrounding him, so his points really matter when they do come in. And I think he just is a generally great scorer. Like, if you watched his highlights, which I highly recommend you do, now the season is almost a month away, you should really consider how good he is as a player and how well the team around him is to get into this place. Flag was a first-team All-American last year. He's not better than Cooper Flag or at the same level, but he's not that far off, so second team is pretty much correct, if you're going to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think their games are very similar in terms of the comparisons between DeBanza and Cooper Flag. Granted, I don't think DeBanza will have the season Cooper Flag just did, but like you mentioned, if you've seen the videos of the one-on-one drills that BYU men's basketball's gone through, that their social media teams have put out, DeBanza can put the ball in the basket, and he's just so crafty what he can do off the dribble. He's a 3-level scorer. He's shooting from beyond that 4-point line that Kevin Young has installed on the courts in Provo, in the practice gyms. And again, I think he's super talented, has great size and length. I think he's going to bring solid defense to the table as well, along with what should be strong scoring numbers from him. But getting on to our next guy, I have Trey Kaufman-Wren, was a third-team All-American last year, if I'm not mistaken, might have been an honorable mention. I forget off the top of my head, but averaged close to 20 points per game last year. There is a chance that those numbers might take a slight dip, considering that Purdue is bringing in other guys like Omer Mayer, Oscar Clough, William Murphy off the bench. But I still think TKR is one of the best low-post presences in the sport. And I fully expect them to probably get close to around the same production he had last year, might dip down from close to 20 to around maybe say 17 or 18, but I think his impact is still going to be felt nonetheless offensively.
Yeah, I love the choice here. I think Purdue is just such a good team that it honestly deserves the players that they have in Smith and TKR. TKR in particular has a first team ceiling as well, but I feel like having two players from the same team in the first team is egregious. But Purdue could be that team. Honestly, they might be one of the best squads we've ever seen. This might be the best team the Boilermakers have ever produced in their 80 plus years of playing college basketball. That said, it's just probably better put him on second team. And I think we'll toss another guy like TKR, who is returning with great ambitions. Alex Condon in Florida. He has that national champion background, and he's really going to be thrust into that position now that we are losing Walter Clinton Jr. and Martin and everybody who really saw that team through. And Florida's not in any worse of a position than they were last year. They're probably starting off actually probably better, or at least better rated, I should say. He probably won't be the main ball handler. I feel like it's going to be passed around a lot, so I can't see him making a first team. But second team feels very correct for what will likely be a top 2 or 3 SEC squad.
Yeah, and granted, he didn't have the greatest showing in the postseason between the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament, but it's so hard to ignore the level that Alex Condon was playing at during the SEC regular season last year. And if he can replicate that for the entirety of this upcoming season, then I have no reason why I shouldn't believe that Alex Condon will make an All-American team. I think he's going to be so crucial just having that retention in your front court. Not only him, but you're bringing back Thomas Haupt and Ruben Shaglu. As a scorer, I love what Condon brings to the table, being able to step out, hit the three-point shot. He's going to be able to score a lot down low by the basket. And I do think his playmaking out of the post is really underrated. I do think that's what kept Florida in a lot of games at the NCAA tournament where they were kind of on the ropes at certain points. But yeah, I think overall the second team has a bunch of guys that do have the ceiling of making a first team, but right now we have them slated on our second. But going on to our third, I'm going to kick it off with PJ Haggerty. Was an All-American this past season. I fully expect him to replicate similar scoring numbers, and I do think there's a chance that his assist numbers might take a leap as well. It's really going to be interesting to see how he kind of meshes with Jerome Tang. Tends to like his diva point guards, but I fully expect PJ Haggerty to have a really big year. And me and Josh are both believers in K-State. If K-State's able to make the NCAA tournament, PJ Haggerty is more than likely going to be the number one reason why.
100% agree with you. I like the upside of Haggerty. There was a chance for him being the second team, but because of how Kansas State could perform this year, it really is a coin flip between them being like Bree's version and Villanova of this year. I just don't understand putting him preseason second team, but he could definitely show off. He'll be a 20 per game scorer for sure, and I do love watching him play. I'll throw in another guy kind of like him, and that being Darren Peterson, the next best rookie going to the other Kansas school. Who would have thought? Peterson is kind of gifted this role of being the ultimate scorer for a Bill Self-led squad. That's kind of crazy to think about saying it out loud, but Peterson should be just a complete ball dog. I expect him to have the ball in his hands almost the entire time he's on the court, and this is not a deep bench. He'll be playing 30 minutes a night minimum, and I think that probably should just put him down for third team guaranteed. He can make a second team if he plays as well as Debansa, if not even better. But because Kansas is likely going to be not a bottom tier team, but like a bottom ranked tier team, I feel like the best thing he should be getting, at least preseason wise, is that third team.
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, flag last year, but it's been incredible the amount of hype that surrounded Darren Peterson's name throughout the course of this entire offseason. Bill Self has came out and said he is the best freshman he has ever coached and says he thinks he's better than Andrew Wiggins. Recently, I forget off the top of my head who it was, but someone was comparing Darren Peterson to Kobe, which again, that's some major, major praise coming from people who cover the sport.
That one is just a little bit out there. Like, I like Bill Self a lot, but him comparing any player to Kobe, the styling I can see. I've seen his highlights like that, but Peterson is not that good. Let's be honest. If you're here to watch Darren Peterson or to hear us talk about him, we like him. He's a great addition to the college basketball sphere. He's not Kobe Bryant, please.
Yeah, I don't think it was Bill Self that came out and said it was some person who covers high school basketball. They put the Kobe's high school tape to Darren Peterson side by side and said there's a lot of similarities. I'm curious to see how that pans out, but nonetheless, how far Kansas goes this year is going to be completely tied to how Darren Peterson performs. Firm believer the scoring numbers will be there. It's just a matter of how efficiently he can reach those numbers. I still think he's going to be either one or two in terms of best freshman in the country this year. But getting on to the third guy that we both have on our third team, we have Miles Uzan returning for Kelvin Sampson, one of the three returning big role players. He transferred over to Houston entering last season. And you could argue in the back half of the year, he was probably a top 5 point guard in the country. I fully expect to see his numbers take a leap now that LJ Cryer has graduated and has moved on to professional basketball. But there's a full world of possibility where Houston ends up as a number one overall seed. I do think they probably end up as a one seed regardless, and I have a tough time seeing any one seeds without some sort of all-American talk with any of their players on their roster. So I think Uzan is going to be crucial. He's a great playmaker, really good defender, great size he brings at point. And I think his scoring will jump a little bit this year. And I'm excited to see how he runs the show for Kelvin Sampson and the Cougars this year.
Really, really like that opportunity as well. He will definitely be a big addition to that team. Let's throw out another guy here on the third team. Let's bring in Boozer.
Yeah.
Cam Boozer. I think that's a big, big talking point here. Another freshman. He's kind of in that mix. There's a lot of nice freshmen to put on this list. And I think Duke's going to have a great season. I'm not trying to slot in Duke like everybody does every single year. He's not Cooper Flag, let's be honest with you, but he's the best player on that squad for a reason. He likely will be, definitely in that front runner right now for Player of the Year in the ACC. And I feel like at a minimum, the ACC Player of the Year should be a third-team guy. I know the ACC is not that strong of a conference right now, but you're playing in a Power 5 division. You're playing at one of the best schools in the country, regardless of the matter. I like Boozer's game a lot. I like it a lot. I've seen a lot of his highlights as well, and he definitely fits the role that he needs to fit so well right now, and the third team feels pretty slam dunk right now.
Yeah, I'm a big Cam Boozer fan a lot, too. From the practice tape that I've seen that Duke has put out, he actually shoots the three ball a lot better than what I thought he was advertised as coming in. But John Shire's gone on record and said he thinks Cam Boozer can have a similar impact to what Cooper Flag had. That being said, I think Coop's team last year at Duke was a lot more all-around deep and talented than this year's Duke team. And I think they're going to be a lot more reliant on Cam than they were perhaps on Cooper last year. And I think that's going to lead to Cam Boozer potentially having a higher scoring season than the Cooper Flag did. But overall, he's probably, again, if you watch our ACC preseason overview video, he was my pick for ACC Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year. There's a world where he could be on a second or first team All-American squad. I fully expect him to, at minimum, be on the third team as my ACC Player of the Year pick. But I'm excited to see how he plays out in Durham. And getting on to the last guy we have on our third team All-American squad, that is Graham Ike at Gonzaga. I think Graham Ike is, again, above the rest of the roster in terms of most important returnee and addition. I know Tyan Grant Foster, Josh mentioned me before we start recording, is currently on waivers, so we'll kind of see what happens with that. He's not fully guaranteed to be able to play this year. I believe he will. Nonetheless, Tyan Grant Foster didn't have a great year at GCU this past season. We're going to see how he bounces back. But Graham Ike, high volume score around 16 or 17 a game last year for the Zags, and you could definitely see those numbers jump. Mark Few's going to have to rely on Graham Ike big time if Gonzaga can be anywhere near the tier of being a contender in the country.
I agree. And Ike is probably the second best true five behind Zuby. He does get the third team, though, because it really does consider how well Mark Few's Gonzaga team will be. This is probably one of the lower years for Gonzaga, which has been through a lot of, lower years recently. We don't even know if they're going to start the preseason ranked. And I don't know how well they're going to continue. UCC is not looking that strong, and their conference games are really going to be all that matters for them right now. I feel like Ike will be a 20 to 25 point per game scorer, which should leave it alone enough reason. He's been very consistent. He had a great season last year, and I don't think he even got an honorable mention, which I think is a little bit annoying because he was the second best player on that team, which was still a decent team at the end of the day. I will say I think Ike probably deserves this role more than any other opposing center, and therefore should be slotted as a third team, although a second team is not out of reach if a Condon or TKR fades a little bit going into the year.
Most definitely. I love everything you had to say about Graham Ike regarding that. But now let's throw out some of our honorable mention picks, guys who we think could be on the cusp of making an All-American team, could potentially make an All-American team. I got to say, I think I'm most excited for these picks more so than the other ones we've thrown out. I think these are guys with crazy high ceilings and definitely could shock a lot of people this year. But first pick, I'm going to throw out Josh. Is a huge fan of this kid coming into Louisville. That is Michael Brown Jr. I think there's definitely a world where he's a top 3 freshman in the sport this year. I love the game he's bringing to the table as, one, being able to be an off-the-dribble creator, 2, as a passer. I love what I've seen out of the clips that Louisville has put up so far in their off-season practices, and I think the kid's going to be a stud right away.
I 100% agree with you. I love just how good Michael Brown can be. Louisville will be a top 5 to 10 team. I feel like if there's any person on that team to get a All-American listing, it would be him. I feel like he could honestly get snubbed. If there's any guy to get snubbed as well, it is Michael Brown Jr. But there are just too many good players right now on the third team to put him on the list. We were both considering it beforehand, but for just the fact that he is a freshman, we don't really know how he's going to be at the end of the day. We'd rather keep the 3 freshmen we already have that we kind of trust more, I should say, on that list. But he's close. He is so close to being that role.
Yeah, he's really close. And let me tell you, his scoring numbers might not jump at you off the paper, but I think believe I've come on record and said this on the podcast before, where I think he could have a very similar impact to what we saw out of Tyler Ennis in his freshman season at Syracuse in 2013-14. Five-star kid coming in, has a lot of experience and talented players around him, but nonetheless does a lot contributing in the playmaking aspects of the game, along with what he brings defensively and just being able to score when they have to fall back on a guy and just need him to go make a play and get a bucket. But anyways, getting on to our next pick on this honorable mention team, I have Bennett Sturts. Again, not really too much needs to be said about Bennett in terms of just what he is bringing to the table at Iowa, of course, coming over from Drake. Really amazing showing in the NCAA tournament last year. I think he's one of the best tough shot makers returning to the sport. His shooting should be there all season long. I'm curious to see how he's going to perform now playing Power 5 competition in the Big Ten every game. But I think he should have a really good year nonetheless.
Yeah, I really like his opportunities too. There's not much in addition I could see. There is that third team. I don't know where his limit could be on that particular, but I'm very excited to watch him going into next.
Yeah, and got to show the mid-majors some love here. I'm throwing out Miles Byrd at SDSU. I think Miles Byrd, he came out on the record and said he returned to San Diego State because he's a firm believer that they can compete for a championship this year. I honestly think there's a world where they can make it to the Elite Eight, maybe even a Final Four once again. But Miles Byrd, I mean, the size he brings at around 6'7", 6'8" maybe. But last year, around 13 points per game, I believe, close to 3 assists, decent as a rebounder as well. But I think he's a guy who, if he plays, if we see a jump in those numbers and SDSU is as good as I believe they'll be, then I think he could play his way into being a late lottery pick. I really do. I just think he's super talented as a 3-level scorer. I think he needs to prove slightly defensively, but I think the world is there for him to make an All-American team. But right now, I have him slotted in as an honorable mention.
Yeah, no, Bird would definitely he's probably the best mid-major player right now. Besides me, I guess Graham Ike.
Yeah.
But the opportunities that this San Diego State team has is great. This is probably the best roster Brian Dutcher's ever had, but this is kind of giving me that was Kawhi Leonard early 2000s or late 2000s vibe. This is a really, really good team in what is supposed to be the last good year of the Mountain West. I feel like if there's going to be any show off for this squad, it will definitely be Miles Byrd. He was great last year. He will have a lot of good help behind the returners of Magoon Guaf and Pharaoh Compton. And if there's anything to say about Byrd himself, he's had great experience in the past, and it will definitely show going into the, honestly, a still decent Mountain West. They will be good. I think Colorado State and New Mexico can have nice bounce back seasons from losing their coaches. And will have the competition needed to make a third team. We're leaving him as honorable mention for the time being.
Yeah, and this next pick's a really fun one. We have Cohen Carr. Of course, everyone knows about how freakishly athletic Cohen Carr is. I mean, if you've seen the videos Michigan State basketball has put out on their social medias, they do vertical testing every so often. They literally have to put the vertical testing pole on a pad to put it further high, to make it harder for Cohen Carr to reach a max vertical. And it's just insane. You've seen the highlight dunks he throws down transition. I think we're going to see a jump in his all-around game. I think he's going to improve as a shooter this year. I'm a firm believer we're really going to see it. And I think he has a chance to develop a little bit more of a back-to-the-basket game. I think he's going to be able to get on the glass a lot, just again, with how freakishly athletic he is, and get a lot of second chance point opportunities. And I think for Michigan State to be able to make a second weekend this year in what could be one of, if not the last Tom Izzo season, then Cohen Carr's going to need to be a stud for them and work his way into maybe being a lottery pick.
No, I 100% agree with you. I love his upside. This is his junior year. I feel like this is time for him in that breakout season. Izzo is pushing him to be that guy, replacing the whole squad they had last year. I think they will be at a similar level, maybe not as good as to get a 2 seed, but him and Cam Ward will make a really good duo, and expect to see some explosive dunks. I'm so excited to watch him out there in Michigan and Lansing. And I think that he could have a great ceiling. We're putting him in honorable mentions because we really don't know about him. He really hasn't had the breakout season I was expecting to have last year. So I'm really hoping that he's that guy to do it this year.
Yeah, and getting on to our last honorable mention pick, we have Terrace Reed Jr. at UConn. This past season, he had the best year of his career coming off the bench. He will now be the starting center for Dan Hurley. I think there's a world where he could average 16-9, maybe 15-8. He could average double-digit rebounds. I think if UConn is a top 2 seed going into the NCAA tournament, Terrace Reed is going to be a big reason why, if they are able to become one of those top seeds going into March. But again, I think he has really high upside, develop a little bit above the shoulders and in the mental aspects of the game, making it less the on-court errors that we saw this past season. But I think the ceiling's there, and I'm excited to see Terrace Reed in stores for his senior year.
Yeah, I like once again the upside that Terrace Reed has. He might not be the main player on this team, which would confuse a lot of people if he were to make a third team. But the center role is very thin. He'll be competing to be edge forward for that big, Big East Player of the Year, or like that level in it, I should say. But long term, I don't really know if he could stay a whole season as good as an Ike or a Condon or a TKR, which is why he's being level 2 in honorable mention. But a third team is definitely not out of reach.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much going to take care of all of our preseason All-American picks. Again, there's a lot of opportunity for other guys that weren't mentioned today to make the list. You might disagree. If you disagree, we're curious to hear in the comments below who you might think deserves a spot on one of these lists. But again, that's going to take care of everything we have today. And until next episode, we'll see you all next time.